Welcome to Hustle Estate in good old Hoboken, New Jersey. I just wanted to take a second before we start today and ask you guys that if you have any questions or comments or any topics you'd like to hear us go over, please reach out to us at hustleestate1@gmail.com. So again, that's hustleestate1, that's the number 1 at gmail.com. We're here for you. We'd love to hear your feedback. So today we are going to talk about career pivoting. We had already discussed it a little earlier about myself and my career pivoting. So in this episode, we're going to talk about Isaac and some of the changes that he's gone through, because he's made some large changes as well. So Isaac, why don't you tell us a little bit about your career path and what's landed you here today?
Yeah, so I did not start, or I never thought I would be in the real estate industry, to say the least. And when I began my journey, I started with a background in urban planning. So I was fortunate enough to get a master's degree in urban planning from the University of Michigan. And I thought about getting my master's degree when I was in undergrad studying political science, because I took a class on urban studies and urban politics. And I got really interested in cities, and growing up outside of Manhattan, it was something that I had a passion for. I loved hanging out in Manhattan. I remember hanging out with you in Manhattan all the time. And so urban planning seemed like a great next step for me. And as I was looking for jobs in that career or in that industry, I found that a lot of the urban planning jobs out there required a master's degree, which is kind of crazy to think about now. But I got my degree, and while I was in my program, I actually started to make maps using data. So a lot of census data, a lot of governmental data. But the coolest thing, in my opinion, was the technology behind that map making. And from there, I kind of sparked my idea of maybe it's not urban planning that I really enjoy. Maybe it's thinking about urban data and how to leverage technology to help other people understand urban problems or whatever it may be. And so I started looking into technology positions, and I found myself going through a program at the time, a fellowship program called Challenge Detroit, which maybe we'll talk about a little later. And that got me my first entry point into technology, because through that program, I was placed at a small technology company in Metro Detroit. And I quickly learned that I liked working for a tech company. I did not like the job I was doing at that time. So I then went and moved on to a different position about a year or so later, working for a tech incubator and accelerator program in Detroit that helped small businesses ultimately grow. And I helped open a co-working space. So I went from doing marketing at a technology company to helping small businesses and entrepreneurs work together, build a community at a co-working space. And then both of those years, I was working a lot with technology people, whether they were programmers, whether they were building out technology platforms or building out business models behind technology platforms. And I decided I wanted to get even more technical.
Okay.
So I was in urban planning school. I learned a lot about data. These last 2 years, I started focusing a lot on understanding how to grow a business, how to build a business. I had this side hustle going on where I was building out a small retail bike store in the city of Detroit as well. And I still thought that I needed to get a little bit more technical to really get to where I wanted to be, to really kind of put together my urban planning degree and put together my passion for technology. So I was fortunate enough at the time, boot camps were becoming really popular, and Detroit had just kind of opened up one of their first boot camp programs, and they were offering at a very low cost, almost no cost, for me to go there. But it was a 2-month full-time thing, so I left my job. And actually how I supported myself was I was a Lyft driver for a number of months, but at that time I was still a Lyft driver, and so that's how I primarily supported myself. And I spent 2 months learning how to basically test software using code. So you would write code to test how other programmers would write their code. And it wasn't enough to become a full-time programmer or anything like that, but it was enough to be able to talk the talk. It was on me to kind of understand how could I walk the walk. So that helped me get a position at the company I now work for, first as a software tester and then eventually as a team leader. And that's really how I got into real estate, is working for or doing all these different things to kind of pivot and make those changes that I felt like I needed to do to get to where I wanted to be.
Okay.
So
Awesome. So that's really cool, the whole Lyft driver thing. I don't remember knowing that. So why urban planning originally, I guess? I mean, where did that come from?
I knew nothing about urban planning.
Right.
And it was my senior year of college. I was taking an urban politics course. I started almost at that point, I kind of had this epiphany where I was like, oh, wow, growing up outside Manhattan and enjoying the city, New York City, and enjoying kind of that proximity that I had to New York City, it seemed to make sense to me that like maybe I have a passion for cities. And I read one of Jane Jacobs' kind of big books, kind of a Bible, if you will, for urban planners, The Death and Life of American Cities. And from there, I just kind of thought, hey, I would like to learn more, and I'd like to study cities and think about how do cities kind of operate, and not from a governmental level per se, but just how do streets change the way that people behave, whether it's driving, biking, walking. How do buildings on those streets play in the way that energy is consumed, or the way that people behave on those streets. So if you don't have public spaces, maybe the street becomes more dangerous because there's less eyes on the street, and that's something that Jane Jacobs kind of recognized. And we can go into a lot of detail about that, but at the end of the day, that kind of just interested me, and it became a natural passion of mine, and it still is. Okay. I read a lot about cities and specifically technology within cities, but just love to kind of spend time in cities and observe how things change and a lot of cool stuff there.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about Challenge Detroit. From what I remember back when you were doing Challenge Detroit, it was really difficult to actually get into the program, right?
Yeah. So Challenge Detroit. So Detroit has been a very challenged city for a long time now, and it's gone through some major changes, and I believe that it's one of the great comeback stories. But I also believe that Detroit had always had this amazing infrastructure, if you will, not city infrastructure, but just this amazing history, this amazing past. And everybody knows about Ford and kind of how the car and the American dream that came out of Detroit, and new dreams are coming out of Detroit every single day. So when I was in graduate school, I was 45 minutes in Ann Arbor away from Detroit. I knew about Detroit, but not much more than what you read in the papers at that time, kind of about all the blight, all the crime. And so there was lots and lots of thinking on ways to improve the city and to bring talent into the city, whether it was people that grew up in Detroit, went away for jobs or college or whatever, and came back, or whether it was fresh faces from outside the city or even outside Michigan like myself.
Yep.
And so Challenge Detroit was a program that took 30 young people, mostly entry-level jobs, that was their focus, and helped them find positions within the Metro Detroit area to then spend more time in the city thinking about some of these problems. And so there were 30 fellows the first year as part of the inaugural class. And that class, we worked at our host companies, and I was at this technology company 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, doing marketing stuff at my position. And then on the Friday, or the fifth day of the week, all 30 fellows would come together, and we kind of acted as a think tank. And we acted as a think tank for, at that time, 10 nonprofit organizations. Those nonprofit organizations gave us these problems, and to kind of help them think about ideas to solve those problems. And those problems ranged from marketing materials, community benefit programs. One example that I can give was we worked for an organization in a neighborhood in Detroit where they were having a lot of trouble providing the services that they offered, or getting the information out about the services they offered. They were a social service organization to their neighborhood and to the population around them. And so we just kind of were there to help talk to people, to help learn about, hey, how do you receive information? A lot of people didn't necessarily have access to the internet at that time. This was 7 years ago at this time, so it was a little different, but a lot of people used mobile phones though, right? They didn't have home internet, but they had mobile phones. So how could we tap into those type of things just by talking to the residents? Because they just didn't have all the resources to be able to go out and talk to all the residents all the time. But a group of 30 young people We had a lot of energy, we had a lot of passion, we wanted to do cool things. So, over the course of 4 weeks, we were able to kind of get information, digest it, and say, hey, here's our recommendations.
Okay. So you mentioned you were 4 days at your job and 1 day at Challenge Detroit. Did your company have to okay this, or were you working Monday through Thursday? That's interesting to me.
Yeah, so each company kind of worked with the organization Challenge Detroit. They're a nonprofit, and they understood. They kind of bought into the system. They bought into the way that that it was set up. So the four days at the company and the 5 days there, and so we were paid. Everybody at that time was paid a $30,000 salary, and every organization offered benefits. Every organization had different perks, right? Some people worked for large companies, other people worked for small technology companies like me. Some people worked in the city of Detroit, some people worked outside of the city of Detroit. And so those are some of the differences, but generally everybody received kind of the same baseline package.
Okay. So now, is this the time when you were working at what you were calling the tech incubator, or is this after that you worked there?
So actually we did a program. So Challenge Detroit, when I was in the program working for this small tech company, we worked with TechTown, which is the company at the time, as a client. They were our client of Challenge Detroit. And then, so I made some connections. And after that summer, after I left the small tech company, I joined TechTown at that time because they were looking for somebody to help them build out their co-working space. So they physically built out a space, and they said, hey, we need someone to kind of figure this stuff out. So that's what I did. Ultimately, co-working spaces were becoming a big thing, just like boot camps. And between me and a few other community builders within the city that were also building out co-working spaces, we worked together to figure out best practices and think about how could we connect more. And it was a great opportunity.
So was TechTown kind of its own company with a lot of people doing, this tech kind of stuff, starting their own business in there, and they wanted to start a workspace or for them, or was this more of that they were kind of on the, forefront of this this idea of a shared workspace, and they wanted to have that separately? So was that one of their ideas to build a workspace, or were you building this workspace for them?
It was kind of both. So they renovated a part of the building that they were in, and they own the building, and so their idea was, hey, we have entrepreneurs coming in, we're helping them build their businesses, but at the same time, there is this space that for a fairly low cost you could rent out, a desk or even just a seat. We had tiered prices, so and I forget what the cost structure was at the time, but for a very low cost, you could come in and we'd offer you, coffee, internet, some refreshments, and just some very basic amenities. And almost instead of working from home, or instead of, renting out a desk somewhere in some office space, it was a much more economical way to kind of do work. But the big benefit of co-working spaces is that they're communal. Yeah. That you're meeting other entrepreneurs, that you're spreading ideas together, that maybe you're even end up solving problems or partnering together on solutions that can, whether they're sellable or whether you're just, hey, I am in the need for graphic design. You do graphic design. I'm in the need for maybe accounting. I do accounting. Let's help each other out here, and almost barter, if you will.
Yep.
So, and really, after about a year or so of doing that, it was really difficult. It was a big challenge because starting a space from nothing, you have to build out the clientele yourself. And TechTown had a pretty great reputation, so a lot of people would come to us. But at the same time, I had to make connections. I had to go out there and build my network so that I could say, hey, we're trying to build this community. We're trying to build this thing here. You should be a part of it, and here's why.
Okay. Awesome. So now you move on to learning code. This is a big change. You're working for TechTown. You're helping them start, a we workspace, communal workspace here, and now you run off to, this code academy, this boot camp to learn. So dive into that a little bit.
I think I got lucky, right? At that time, boot camps were becoming a thing, and so they were trying, at least in Detroit, they were trying to really figure out, hey, who would be a good fit for this? I knew at that time one of the people that were kind of organizing it because of working for TechTown and building out my network at that time. So I kind of picked their brain and I said, hey, I'm looking to get more technical, and I was doing some self-learning. Like, I think that was very much a part of it, was this boot camp would only get you so far. But if you did your own self-learning and you kind of were driven or motivated to really figure it out on your own, or to work with others outside of the boot camp to learn, that kind of gave you another edge. And I am not a proficient coder. If you want me to solve a problem writing code, I can do it, and I'll do it poorly. But at that time, it really just helped me understand kind of more of the technical aspect of engineering, or building solutions that a computer ultimately accomplishes for us. And it is just it's just a different mindset, really. It's not that the problems aren't really difficult to solve. The problems aren't any different than you and I solve on a regular basis. They're just, how can a computer solve that problem versus you or I solving that problem, or part of that problem. And that requires a different mindset.
Okay. So this is probably a hard question for you to answer, or it might be, but so you go to school for political science, you do some urban planning, you think you want to be an urban planner, you learn about the map system, you go tech, you go to the boot camp, you've done tons of stuff, and here you are now. You got a job at a company that you were starting to test software, and you've moved your way up to a team leader where you're not really doing that software stuff anymore, you're more managing the team. Like, what's next? Where do you see, how, I guess, could you even see yourself, because you've just made so many changes? What do you think is in the future for you now that real estate's a big part of your life, and you like this technology?
Yeah. I think when I was in urban planning school, there was definitely a track you could do real estate stuff, whether it was real estate development or things related to the real estate world. I was never super interested in that. What I've come to really enjoy, though, is working in the title industry, working in the mortgage industry, working in the real estate industry. Cities, whether it's big or small, townships, big or small, every state, has a need for homeowners, whether it's investors like yourself, right? Like, I'm going to rent from Ed, or I want to own my own home and start a family, kind of the American dream style. All of those, all that property, all that real estate, there is information behind it. And I really enjoy kind of understanding the urban planning side of things, and the urban, some of the urban issues that are going on, and now understanding the economics and the data behind a lot of that stuff. And so I'm working towards kind of fusing those two things together, whether it's one day starting my own company, whether it's just helping the company I currently work for just be better, right? Or even just helping the company that I currently work for, helping others think about their problems differently using my knowledge and my expertise. And so, even today I was doing a lot of market data research, just kind of understanding why are the mortgage rates going up, or why is there a decrease in applications or mortgage applications, which ultimately can cause a decrease in title orders.
Right.
They're very much coupled together. So, and then there's a lot in general. Technology is really disrupting the mortgage and real estate industry altogether, right? Companies like Zillow, MLS versus Zillow. That's, the MLS data, even, as a realtor, like, MLS data is huge. That's a huge platform in and of itself. But Zillow and Trulia and those type of companies, they've really come in and said, hey, we can maybe do it better than you.
Yeah, definitely, because that MLS system at times it can be archaic, and they're so individualized. There's 4 or 5 that I use just in the North Jersey area.
Right.
It's crazy that technology has come so far, as you've said, but yet we are so far behind still. Like, you even know from title, right? Like, an issue that I see is that mortgages are recorded, but they're recorded over here. And then you have to go and find out, is there a lien on that person? You find that over here, and how much taxes are owed on that. Like, there's no easy, I feel like at this point you should be able to just go in and search and, find out this stuff. It should be fairly quick.
And there's a lot of reasons why, right? And there's no one specific answer. Some of it's regulation, some of it, some of it's governmental, some of it's just, technology has just not solved that problem yet for whatever reason. And I mean, honestly, every county, every recording jurisdiction kind of does it a little differently. It just depends. So really figuring out whether it's title or just real estate in general can be kind of a headache at times. And so we look, or at least the company I work for, and the way that I think about it personally, is technology is not there to remove people from the process. It's there to improve what we people do with that process and with that information, right? How can we make decisions smarter or better to improve the real estate process, whatever process within real estate that is, for the future, whether cities are using it, whether realtors are using it, whether I personally am using it. You know, how can we improve that process? How can we improve that experience?
Awesome. So throughout this very busy but fairly brief, I mean, we've only been out of school for, coming up on 8 years now. Well, you did go and get your master's degree, but what would you change? Would you change anything? I mean, knowing what you know now.
That's a great question. I don't know if I would change anything at this point. I think there is something to say about how understanding what you want to get out of your degree. I think I was very fortunate that the University of Michigan really offers a kind of a broad degree, in the sense that they're there to help you think about the future, not there to help you get a job. Actually, one of my professors once made a comment in class, and I made a smart-ass comment afterward. He said, "We're not here to help you get a job today. We're here to help you lead the future of urban planning." And I said, "Oh, great, thanks." Like, kind of being like, I'm looking for a job now, not 10 years from now.
Yeah.
But thinking about that comment, like, I thought he was kind of right. He was helping us become thought leaders, not so much just order takers.
Yep.
And I really believe that what I learned in school is 100% usable throughout the rest of my life, because I choose to live in cities, or we all choose to live somewhere, and those places, it's important to understand how those places operate, whether it's basic zoning laws, whether it's understanding, your own title or history of your property, whether it's important to understand just generally how politics works and how politics, city council, the different branches within those areas. And so all those things I learned I learned more about in planning school. And so I think all those things have been beneficial in my career so far.
Awesome. Well, you certainly had a busy, like I said, period. The past 7 years, a lot of stuff has changed.
Yep.
Sounds like you have a bright future ahead, and a lot of good ideas, to come forth.
Cool. All right. Well,
Awesome.
I think that's all we got for this
really
week.
Good.
And I hope anybody that watches, you enjoy. If you have any feedback for us, please let us know.
Yes.
Again, Hustle Estate 1, that's Hustle Estate and the number 1 at gmail.com. You can reach us there. You can reach me at Isaac Gilman. That's my Twitter handle. And then I know we earlier plugged it, but edhedrickson.com. What are your 3 things? Let's go over real quick.
I do sheriff sales. I do hard money and wholesaling. So those are my 3 avenues that I'm able to help anybody out. Advice or anything, check out my site. There's a comment section if you have any questions. Doesn't necessarily need to be that you're looking to work with me. I'll answer questions, anything. I love to help people out.
He's looking for that win-win situation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Givers gain.
I like it. All right, well, take care, and talk to you guys soon.
Bye, guys.